So Ruth, we know that football club charities always start with football, but there's so much more than that, working across such a broad spectrum of topics. Can you tell us about how the Premier League and EFL are using football to impact people's lives beyond the pitch?
Yeah, and I think Mollie's brilliantly spoken about some of those things, those pathways, those employment opportunities, education. So yeah, 90 magical minutes on a pitch each week, but day in, day out, week in, week out, 365 days a year, the foundations that you and we support are doing the most incredible work in their communities. And our strategy funds programs in primary schools, secondary schools and community settings. So it's health and well-being, mental and physical. It's education and employability. It's what we call safer spaces as well. So literally saving lives. We've got the Premier League Kicks programme, which has been running for longer than the charity, so 17 years now. And one of my colleagues, as a young man, had the choice of going to football or out with friends, one of whom that evening was fatally injured in an incident, and he literally says that football saved his life because he hadn't taken the decision to go to the football session that evening. Things could have turned out very differently, and that's not a unique story. What's unique about that story is he went on to become a youth worker, he went on to become a charity worker, and he's now changing lives. So it's that sort of virtuous circle as well, where it keeps paying forward. And sometimes it's a bit of a Trojan horse. Sometimes people might not be realised that they're being steered on the right path. Or example in our primary school programme, Premier League Primary Stars, where for World Book Day this year, we had 400,000 pupils joined an online session with the National Literacy Trust. They didn't think they were being taught about literacy. We gave out 28,000 books. We've given out 300,000 books as part of World Book Day since the scheme started. But those are reluctant readers who might not have thought that they were any good at school, who might not have had a teacher believe in them. But when a coach came in a tracksuit, a badge and a brand that they believed in, and sat and read a football programme with them, it really just transformed things for them. So I think, all of those things and more. Tackling inequalities is another key part of our strand. But anything that's a societal issue, we can tackle through football, and hopefully in a way that is also fun and enjoyable, because we start with football and we wouldn't be here without it. But it's so powerful beyond those 90 minutes on the pitch.
And certainly what I've seen is that in a world where you see local councils, NHS institutions really struggling to engage with people around some of the major societal issues, what we see is that football organisations, football club charities, organisations like the Powerhouse, they're breaking down barriers. They don't come with any stigma attached, and they come as trusted organisations, and so they can really have an impact because they draw people in like no others. And you see that day in, don't you, across all of our organisations. And I really think that it would be helpful if we were used a lot more. You know, we know, for example, and I'm sure Ruth will give the stats later, but across the EFL clubs, 1.1 million people were engaged in community activities alone last season. And when you think about the big societal challenges that we face, having that level of engagement would really start to address some of those through the power of the football club badge. So Uma, we know that the EFL works with many club community organisations across the professional leagues. What are the biggest challenges facing communities, and how are our organisations, football club charities like the EFL, supporting on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to reference some of the notes here because the stats are actually mind-blowing. So we've got 40% of our participants from last year lived in 20% of the most deprived postcodes in England. So that just goes to show the depth and reach of what the charitable club organisations can reach. It also suggests that there's a huge cost of living challenge and a shared challenge, sadly, not a great shared challenge, but nevertheless one that club charities and football clubs are battling with. So there's a lot of cross-pollination and learning there as well. I mean, programs such as Blackpool Football Club's Big Truck Food provision. So this is about food banks and putting in your order and the food trucks coming to help deliver that food to the football club, to the most poorest in society is just one example. Port Vale's Baby Bank, having donations with retail partners, having baby wipes and nappies dropped off and food and things like that, just again helping those that are most deprived and neediest in society. Just two examples there. In 2023 and 2024 season, £165 million of investment and support was provided by EFL clubs and their charities, which I just think is mind-blowing in terms of the numbers. And this included programmes such as giving free match day tickets, other charitable support, worth over 16 million. We also provided as a board and as an organisation cost of living support worth over 1.16 million. And when you add these numbers up, just think how many lives you're touching and improving. I think, the power and the reach is quite incredible. And our strategy is really about building that capability, amplifying the sort of issues that these communities face, lobbying government, parliament, funders, just to make sure that we can get more and more funding in so that we can help more and more in society. It's actually just mind-blowing, the reach and the breadth and the depth.
And to understand that those football club charities are charities, so I think everybody assumes that there's loads of money in football, and they fail to see that actually those charities need support, like all other charities, to continue their work, which I think is really important to highlight. Now, Rosie, this question I think we could spend a whole session on, but I want to talk to you about what are the highlights of your work, the work of the Powerhouse, supporting girls and women in communities where access to sport has been quite limited. And what needs to happen, in your opinion, to ensure that girls can more openly access football?
Yeah, do you know what? It's so hard to pinpoint highlights, if I'm honest with you, because genuinely, when me and Mol first founded the Powerhouse Project, it started off as one coaching programme. We did not think it would transpire to what it is today, 4 years later. So actually, to answer your question, every programme that we run is a real highlight for us, because we understand how much impact we are having on the women and girls that come through our programme. So just to give you a little bit of oversight into exactly what programmes we do. So we've got 3 coaching programmes currently running with Nike, which Nike have been an unbelievable partner, along with the FA. One called the UEFA B Preparation Programme, which takes girls from the grassroots level of coaching into the elite level of the game. We then have our Next One's Up programme, which really works on diversifying the coaching landscape, which is really important work that we do there. And then we have our Coaching Queens programme, which is all of our global work. So currently we've got programmes running in Ghana, Egypt and Barcelona launching this year, which is really cool. And then I would say, so that's coaching, and that's amazing. And honestly, I can actually look and see a few of the coaches on the Powerhouse Project right now, which is so amazing to see them.
Thanks for turning up.
Yeah, cheers, appreciate it. And then I would also say, more recently, probably the partnership that we've just launched with Google Pixel. I really hope everyone's seen it, because we put a lot behind that in terms of getting the word out there that we were doing that. So, I never thought for 1 minute that I would see the Powerhouse Project in the same sentence as Google Pixel. It still blows my mind. But the work we're doing there is so important to us, because ultimately, me and Mollie understand what it was like to be young girls on the side of a pitch coaching, and ultimately in front of the camera, scared, lifeless, when that red light goes on and you're on live TV, right? So to not have the tools and the resource and the support network that we needed when we were in those positions, we really just want to give back and make sure no young girl and no young woman stepping into that landscape has to go through what we went through, which is ultimately confidence shattering at times. Luckily, I had Mol, and I'd like to think that Mol was lucky to have me at points, and you... Yeah. But yeah, so ultimately they're the highlights. Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent. And then to answer your second question of what more needs to be done, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what? I think where we've probably hit the nail on the head with the programmes that we run is that we've created the programmes with females in mind. And I don't think that happens too often. It's normally a bolt-on for women, right? Whereas we've literally, from scratch, thought, right, okay, what did we need as them 2 young girls coming through the system? First of all, you need that community. So what we do is we make sure we kick off every single one of our programmes with a residential. So you're getting those touch points. You're not just sitting in a classroom and you're looking at the whiteboard and you're getting taught and you're getting educated. That comes, of course. But ultimately, it's those moments at dinner and at breakfast where you're making them connections and you're building that rapport. And then all of a sudden, we've created this real open environment for the rest of the programmes to take place, right? So that's really important to us. And then ultimately, yes, we're upskilling, we're educating, but we're working on the skills like that confidence, the ability to, as a young girl, to then walk into that room and back yourself. So realistically, I think to answer your question, sorry, it's like more female-led programs that cater to women and girls.
Brilliant.
Would be great.
Brilliant, thank you. And I would imagine that you're seeing some amazing friendships, bonds, supportive groups coming from that residential part of what you do, aren't you? I mean, like, how can you quantify that? Have you got some story?
I think for us it is, just turning up to days like today and actually seeing our work come to life. We've got 350 female coaches in our coaching network. The Pixel FC Academy that was just launched had 777 applicants. There was only 12 spots for that. So our conversation with Google now is we need to scale this. There's work that needs to be done. But, to your point, the community work happens every day because what we've built is connections of like-minded women. And this is the support that we lacked coming through. So we hope that no longer when, we've got one of our coaches there, when, our coaches step on their UEFA B qualification off the back of graduating from the UEFA B prep programme, it's a bit of a tongue twister, but when they step on that qualification, they maybe won't feel, that they can't speak or they haven't got the tools or they don't have the knowledge because they've been through that preparation process. That means that if she is the only woman in the room, it doesn't matter. And that's the point. We need to actually build confident women to step into male-dominated industries because we have made progress, but the reality is sport is still dominated by men, all right? And we're making progress, but let's make sure that as women in sport grows, that the infrastructure below it is supporting that. And that's what I think the work we're doing, really does make that impact.
And I think what's really interesting is the way you talked about confidence being shattered when that red light went on. I think there must be a real tendency for everyone to look at people like yourselves, people that sit on panels and think, do you know what, they've got it all together, they're not nervous, they're super confident. And actually, that's not the reality, is it, for anyone?
It's not at all. And I think this is where the environment comes into play, right? Like even us guys before, we were sitting down, we were having a conversation, but we all felt the same, right? It's like we hope it goes well, and we didn't go in like we're going to smash this. Well, I wanted us to, but it just don't happen naturally, right? So for us, that was the environment, though. We need to create that environment to fail forward at times. I think. And that's where, I'm sorry to bring it back to the Powerhouse Project, we're clearly obsessed, but I think, that's where what we missed. We were making mistakes that at times our jobs in the media were being jeopardized for that because we weren't actually trained enough to be in front of that red light when we probably were put in front of it. So actually, can we help women fail forward in the right environment where they're not scared to make mistakes? That's really important.
And also, I think what this conference is brilliant at doing is putting women forward that support other women. I know when I was here a couple of years ago, I said, I'm going to say something really controversial now, and that is, throughout my career, women haven't always been supportive. And I think what we need to see is women absolutely and actively cheering one another on. And doing that more often because, it isn't always that way. And this is a great example of women that do that, I think. But what about the people that aren't in the room that might not be our cheerleaders? That's incredibly important for me.
Can I just add one thing there, Debbie? Emma Hayes spoke this morning about the system that was created by men, for men, 150 years worth of it, and doing things differently for women. You've just articulated beautifully that your learning and coaching and development is with women in mind through the women's lens. So here's the start of that. So we need a lot more of that. And you're already forward thinking and doing it your way because you've been through it, through your lived experiences. You're saying this is the way that would have helped us.
Yes.
Isn't that incredible? So well done, you two.
Thank you. Great plug.
Thank you so
Rosie
much.
forgot to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. And yeah, like to your point, I'm so sorry, Debbie. I know we're going to get told off in a minute, but
you carry on.
right, scrap the question. Throw the paper. But yeah, two things. None of us up here, and I'm speaking on behalf of all of us, but I know it seems like we have it all together. We really don't. And like we, I'll speak for myself, nervous wrecks always. And I think sometimes you can sort of sit in this position and everyone goes, oh, wow, they've done it. We haven't. And, we sort of like have to work really hard to, give off this persona. So don't think that like ultimately we sit here and we've got it all figured out. probably the opposite, and we're still on the journey to like figuring it all out. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing is like that female lens is so important. And when we are creating programs, even if we haven't necessarily been through that bit, so for example, with Pixel FC Academy, there's a workshop on women in production. Myself and Rosie have never been producers, but we know someone that has. So let's bring in the female producer that has worked in BBC Sport, for example, who we have brought in for the last 10 years. Let's speak to her about her experiences. What would she have needed? What would young Keely, who is our member of staff at the Powerhouse Project, what would a young Keely have needed in order to excel quicker in her career? Let's take all of that. Let's go to Google. Let's tell them this is what we need to do. And they'll do it. And they'll listen because we're saying, you want to solve the problem. Do you know what the problem is? We're going to give you the answers to those problems. And I think that's the point. Even if we don't have the answers, we'll find someone that does. And it's about no ego, like who's best for the job for that. Yeah, so thanks, Uma, for highlighting that. Thank you.
Pay me later.
And Debbie, while we're going off script, I just want to build on
Hey, yes, Ruth. Yeah, let's go.
Because I was just thinking, there's a very fine line between nerves and excitement. And what I hear today, and the more you do things like this, the more you channel the excitement rather than the nerves. And if you can think of it like that. And what I just get from you two particularly is this sense of excitement. I can only imagine what being one of the community of coaches that you've got is like. But yeah, of course, people feel nervous, but making it feel exciting is one of the ways I deal with that. And those 350 community coaches should be looking at our network as well. So the network that Debbie and I support, Football's Best Kept Secret, 92 amazing charities working up and down the country with 6,500 people working in tracksuits, but they're not only coaches, they're youth workers, they're mental health first aiders, they're educators, they're care workers, they're all these things. But if any of them are ever looking for a job, come and tap us up because our network would love to work with people that brilliant.
Oh, brilliant. I think we need to have a coffee after, shall we?
Which is the beauty of events like this, isn't it?
There'll be a new partnership being announced next week. Sorry, Debbie, go on.
No problem. So, Ruth, I want to talk about players now. Obviously, we've talked about, this wonderful network that we have. We know that players can inspire. So, can you talk us about that a little bit more? How can players support, amplify the community work? What's the impact that they can have?
Yeah. Well, players are critical. Just like there's no us without football, there's no football without players. And we're one of the largest sports charities in the world, but £8.4 million a year of our money comes from the Professional Footballers Association. So that's players investing in community. And they don't just do it financially, they do it by showing up at community activities, in schools, visits. And I wonder if just for 10 seconds, think about when you were a child, a school child maybe, who was your favourite player? Just have them in your mind for a minute, the player you either wanted to play like or meet or see. And just imagine if they'd come into your school or they had turned up at a football session that you were playing at, and what that would have done for you in terms of the confidence it would have given you, the belief that you could be anything, that relatable role model. And so when we see players out and about on the projects, and we think about children and young people because that's really inspiring, but it's absolutely true all the way through the spectrum. So for older people, maybe in dementia projects that our network are supporting, that legend, that player that they remembered watching when they were younger, might be their only connection with the club in the past. And so the power of players from the youngest participant through to the oldest is phenomenal. And I think we forget that they're people too, so there's a benefit for them in this work. They can feel inspired and engaged by the communities that they're working with. Sometimes they're from those communities, so they're really relatable role models. And I think we see with this generation of players, men and women, they're socially active, socially minded. I think of Marcus Rashford trying to end food poverty. There's so many examples. We've just funded 17 new pilot projects with players, and they're really shaping those projects. They're not just turning up on a visit. They're saying, this is an issue I care about. I've struggled with my mental health, so I'd really like to do something for the community. And they're shaping those projects. They're player-centric as well as just player engagement. So, I mean, that's a bit of a summary, but I think the power of players as role models is and active engaged members of communities is huge.
And when you think about the impact they can have, we talked about some of those big societal issues. If you, for example, have a player going into school and want to talk to young people around the dangers of knife crime, that message is going to land, isn't it? Much better if a player says it than if a teacher or a parent says that. And I think players sometimes get a bad rap. I mean, I'm talking about from an EFL perspective and the men's game. But our players went into community activities and spent 21,000 hours last season alone doing some of that work, and it's good for them because they train in the mornings and they have a lot of time free in the afternoon, so it's really good for them. And I listened recently to a player from the EFL that said he wanted to do this work, and he was doing work around mental health. He wanted to do the work because a player came into his school. It was a Tranmere player that came into his school when he was younger, and that had a massive impact. And then you think about that and you replicate that. If you think about each player doing half an hour, that's 42,000 interactions alone in one season that we can talk about, and that is incredibly impactful, isn't it? Really impactful. So Uma, I want to move on to the power of football now in terms of cultural and social barriers. How is the power of the badge breaking down some of those barriers?
Can I go off piece just for 10 seconds?
You can.
I've
got no say on this panel whatsoever.
We're just all free range, aren't we? I think when I went to visit some of the charities when I first joined the board, I went to Leyton Orient and I saw Omar Beckles, who's doing a lot of work in mental health. And I didn't know Omar Beckles because I didn't know much about Leyton Orient, but he came in to talk to the kids about physical activity and the benefits of mental health. And 100 eyes lit up, and then he picked 10 of them to have a kickabout with, and then we served them food, and they were like, oh, I played football with Omar Beckles, and he said I must exercise regularly. And I'm like, this is just so impactful. Whereas I think somebody from the doctor's surgery or the local council could have sang about it all day long and got no reaction. So anyway, I actually saw it come to life there. So 100% the player engagement is really, really powerful. Back to communities. So a big statistic to change, just to share with you again, 96% of the most ethnically diverse neighbourhoods in England are situated within 10 miles of an EFL club. So again, perfectly placed, the charities, to talk about intercultural understanding, language barriers being broken down, language classes, intergenerational dialogue. And I think using that power and that depth of the reach, you can actually affect a lot of societal changes. And I think one of the examples we've got here is about Rotherham United. They've got something called U4C, which is United for Communities. It's a group of refugees that landed in Rotherham. So again, isolation, loneliness, language barriers. They play football together and they get a lot of mental health support and well-being support by doing this. This has helped them to integrate into society. Many of them now have turned into volunteers and work and offer their time at the clubs. What an amazing story to land somewhere, to be adopted by a football club and its charity and to feel like you belong. So really impactful. One of the projects that the EFL ran recently was a 10 clubs pilot project in the areas that had the highest rates of race and faith hate crimes. We've seen a lot of social cohesion challenges in the media at the moment, and some of these areas that were impacted, Rochdale, Blackburn, Oldham and Preston. Each of the club charity communications work with families, 10 different families from different faiths, different communities, different social standing, and really brought them together to mix in a positive social environment. They got to learn about each other's traditions and cultural sort of preferences, etc. Got involved in community-based celebrations. Really, really like an education and an eye-opener. And then we had an independent survey sort of done around the impact of that, and 30% increase in participants said there was a 30% increase in feelings more positive about people from a different background. And I have a phrase that I use constantly in my other work, which is we should walk towards differences, not away. So something like this is really, really impactful. And also a 30% increase in how they felt about social trust, social community, social capital. So again, a great example of how clubs and communities are placed exactly where they needed to understand the diversity. I just read something about Preston North End on LinkedIn the other day, and their 7th iftar, and, you know, Mo Patel does an amazing job there to bring a community like that into the football club. And, you know, he said before he joined there, it was very rare to see anybody of a Muslim faith enter that football club. So lots and lots of examples, 72 if we had time, but just a flavour of what, you know, what goes on out there.
And we need to shout about this more, don't we? I mean, I'm going to keep going on about what an amazing industry it is that we work in. But I know, and Ruth will hopefully back up that last year, for example, during the summer riots, you know, it wasn't public, but the government turned to football. How can you help? You know, when it came to organisations that could really help with understanding some of those cultural challenges and trying to help communities heal, it was football that was turned to because of that incredible power of the football club badge. So thank you for that, Uma. So Mollie,
Yes.
coming to you next, if I can stay on script.
Go on.
So we've talked about so many wonderful community football initiatives. How can businesses, brands, sponsors better support organisations like yours, organisations like those that will be represented in the room, to develop purposeful partnerships?
Okay. You know, again, I can only speak on our own experiences. And I think everything, first of all, always has to start with who aligns with what you want to do. I think a lot of brands, a lot of organisations where they can, you know, we all know women's sports doing one thing, women's football's only going in one direction. So a lot of brands and organisations will talk the talk at this point. Yeah, we really care. We want to do some great work. Saying and doing, two different things. So I think for us, it's first of all about understanding who actually wants to, first of all, invest, who actually wants to be a part of this in the right way. And we were quite lucky at the Powerhouse Project. As Rosie said, we're a baby. We're 4.5 years old. Obviously, we're not 4.5 years old, but the business is. So, you know, we know that we're in our infancy, but we've done really well, really quickly to align with, you know, a global brand like Nike, who are on a big mission, obviously, to always, you know, change women's football. So for us, it was like, okay, Nike's someone that we really need to get in early to make sure that we can elevate our organisation the way that we want to. So that was the first step. When you step into rooms like Nike and Google as Powerhouse the baby, you have to believe in what you do, because you have a lot of imposter syndrome. You sort of walk in and you think, wow, what are we doing? And you sort of feel like they don't need you. And what we've quickly realised is they really need us, because ultimately what they're saying is we really want to help, we really want to support, but they really don't have a clue about what that means and what the actual problems are. So as I alluded to earlier, we can bring a solution and we can say, listen, these are the actual problems. We've got an idea on this solution, and then it's about working with the right people in the brand that care and ultimately are ready to listen. And I think, again, we identified those people in the brand very quickly. You build the relationship, and then we all play to our strengths. The brands are always going to bring the reach, the magic, you know, the glamorous stuff, and that's great. We need that. But what we're going to bring is community, knowledge, expertise, and you cannot make impact without both, in our opinion, because we want people to want to come, and the magic might bring them in, but then what we deliver has to be, you know, top, so that they come back. So now you've got something that looks quite sexy, like with Nike and Google. You've got something that people want to be a part of, but then what you deliver has to be something that means that actually, as a woman in the industry, I need this. Without this opportunity, I'm not going to get what I need, you know, where I need to go. So for us, it's about aligning with the right brands, believing in yourself in those rooms, and then playing to your strengths. It's always the three things that we sort of stick by when trying to find the right partners.
So at the Powerhouse Project then, have you felt your confidence grow in those moments? And have you found yourself in conversation with brands where you kind of go, actually, no, that's not for us?
Yes. Yes. Oh, it's mad, isn't it, Rose? Like, we actually probably never speak about this, but when you've dealt with Nike for 4 years, to then walk into Google, you think, yeah. Do you know what I mean? I know there's got a bit about. Yeah, we've got a bit now, and I think what that does, it's confidence building, because, and again, we always praise Nike because what they've done is believed in a vision before it was anything. Yeah. You know, they believed in an idea, they believed in a presentation when we said, listen, this is what we want to do, and we always say, you know, we're very grateful and thank you, but we're also saying to Google, listen, if you want to make the same impact, you've got to get on board now. And we have definitely had conversations with partners where it feels off. You know, I think you can feel that they want to do work, but they're not going to deliver on what they say they're going to deliver. So again, you have to make those calls early.
I think with age, we've learned to trust our gut more so. And that's not just with brands, that's with staff that we bring in, that's with relationships you're building. You will just get this punch in your stomach. And if you get that, listen to that. Because I think so many times in
we did ignore that,
oh my gosh, in previous roles or when we've been playing or whatever, we've ignored that and we've just pushed it to the side and it comes out in the wash. It might be 2 years, 3 years later down the line, but it will come out in the wash. So yeah, don't ignore that. That's something that's your guardian angel, as me and Mo say.
Yeah. And just quickly, if you are like, oh, sorry, Debbie.
No, keep going, keep going.
Also, like, if you genuinely want to do something, like, as a woman in that room, I think you already feel like you're up against it. Like, we have felt like that. And I think our blessing has, as Rosie said, been having each other. But walking in as a woman in that room and sort of feeling like you've already got to do a lot of work to convince maybe others in the room that what you want to do is good enough, you really maybe shouldn't be in that room. If you really feel like you're going to have to try so hard to convince these people that women's football is worth investing in, it's probably not the right room because, again, it shouldn't be really a conversation anymore. So I think that's for us now. If the conversation's hard, it's not worth it. So that's another thing that I think we've learned, definitely.
Well, I think it's interesting what you say about you have each other in that room. It would be really great if a takeaway from today was that if we haven't got someone in the room with us, that we've almost got somebody in the room, not virtually, but that we can speak to, confide in, that you can run an idea past. I'm gonna go into the room. This is what I'm delivering. Someone that's absolutely got your back. We should all have that, shouldn't we? Whether it's spiritually or physically in that room.
100%, but that's the work of Powerhouse as well, right? Like, it might not just be one individual. Actually, it's the environment as a whole and it's the community as a whole. And ultimately, if you don't happen to get on one of our programs, we're going to make sure you're part of our collective. So we have this group of like Coach Collective and Media Collective, where if you're not part of the 12, then you're definitely going to be part of our environment and our community anyway, and we're going to bring you forward and bring you along with us. So it's about finding the right environments as well, you know.
I want to be part of this panel.
Oh yeah, no, we'll send you the link. Yeah, Rosa, send me the link.
Yeah. Thank you. So Ruth, coming to you and sticking with the script. How does your work contribute to the aims of Women in Football to promote gender equality, and what impact are you seeing so far?
Yeah, well, I think lifting up other women and being on panels like this and at events like this is part of what we're doing. We're a corporate member as the charity, but the Premier League's also a member of Women in Football. And so I think we've got about 15 people from across the Premier League and the charity here today, all doing their bit. And one of the things I think is this has to come from the top. So as a chief executive, I take responsibility for driving change and equality. But I think it's everyone's day job as well, and that's a mantra we have in the Premier League Charitable Fund. This is everyone's day job, everything you do. I'm looking at one of my brilliant colleagues who's in the second row who just does this every day without thinking. You know, we'll never have a panel at an event that isn't gender balanced. We think really hard about inclusive recruitment. Our panels for selection are gender balanced too. And actually, as an organisation, we are not male dominated. Only a third of our workforce is male. Our gender pay gap is positive for women, not negative. So actually, maybe we're already breaking the barriers a little bit in what we're doing as a charity, small but mighty. But then we also try and do it through programmes. So football programmes are not always equally attended by male and female participants. Our schools programmes are almost 50-50 in secondary and primary schools, male and female. Our KICS programme is probably slightly lower than that, but overall 35% of our participants are girls and women, and we're working to increase that, so that really matters to us. And we designed a specific programme for girls leadership, girls and young women, 11 to 18-year-olds, called Changemakers. And we try to inspire and light fires for those young people. And a couple of weeks ago for International Women's Day, we had an event at the National Football Museum, and we had Chloe Morgan and we had Rebecca Welch, so two trailblazing women, brilliant role models. And they both put one of their football shirts into the collection, into the Heritage Collection, so that was there for future generations as well. So lifting those people up, and they're lifting others. And Rebecca Welch, for those who don't know, was the first female to referee at a Premier League game at Craven Cottage in 23, and she also worked for us at the charity for a little while. So it's about giving people opportunities, and we gave her that opportunity because she was working in the NHS and wanted to pursue her refereeing career, but she came and worked for us while she did that, and we gave her a lot of flexibility, and she gave back in spades because she's just been amazing both for us and beyond, and the role she's played. Chloe Morgan, similarly, she inspired our change makers. She brought a shirt along, the one that she'd worn to win the championship with Spurs and women's championship with Spurs, and she got signed by the 27 participants who were there a year ago, and this year they laid it in the collection. And she said, I might have the signature of the next chief executive of the Premier League on that shirt, or maybe not the next, but a future chief executive. I told the chief executive of the Premier League, and he was a bit worried about that, but I said, no, there's time, don't worry. But yeah, so we're trying to do it through the culture we create ourselves, through the network, the way we support them, through the programmes that we have and the opportunities we create for girls and women, and through being partners with women in football and others. So yeah, loads of stuff, but more to do.
More to do, but what's really heartening is if you think about your Changemakers programme, the conversations that we've been having all day, you know, about women being champions of other women, and, you know, our thought processes, how we approach our daily work, these children will have that embedded from that work, right, you know, right from such an early age. And some of the other work that we've talked about today, you know, young boys will have some of that embedded because of this amazing work, and hopefully young women of the future won't have that as many battles to be heard, to be taken seriously, and the men's game to be respected. So it fills me with hope. I already thought the industry was amazing, but now I'm even more lifted. So I think we've got some time for questions. Does anybody want to ask the panel a question?
What would you say is the moment that was most inspiring for you when you noticed? That's just to anyone, where you really noticed that impact, and you were there, and you were like, wow, really done that.
So was that from a community perspective, football perspective?
Yeah.
Okay. So we had a community event in just before Christmas, and lots of amazing people from our club charity spoke. And the one that stands out for me, and I've forgotten the chap's name, is Derby County. A wonderful, wonderful young man who had very openly admitted he had huge drug addiction problems, was going down a really dark path, spiraling out of control, isolated, lonely, lost, went to his local football club, joined one of their community programs, got himself involved in volunteering, had a purpose, somewhere to go to, somewhere to help. Somebody wanted to see him and talk to him. I think he spoke so eloquently. I'm not doing him any justice at all here. But I sat there listening to him, and he said, you know, I felt like somebody cared. And this is Derby County Community Trust, who then invested time, put him on a program. He got a degree. He now works with them full time. He's got married. He's about to have a child. And I sort of listened to that and think, what an amazing journey. And to walk into, you know, a strange place, to be welcomed, to not just be given a cup of tea, but to say, we can hear, we can help. Now, I know not every charity will be able to do that, but in his case, he walked into the right place. Somebody cared enough, gave him time, gave him support, invested in him. He's now a fully functioning, contributing member of society. For me, that's just just amazing. I don't have words to describe how I felt. I wanted to give him a hug. I did actually give him a hug at the end. And he was just really grateful to Derby County, and he's doing some great things for them, and now helping others who have challenges. I thought that was amazing, that story.
I think what's amazing is you managed to say Derby County about 3
I know,
times.
and I'm a Leicester City supporter. That was a bit hard, but anyway. Yeah, I did. Yeah, and I know you love Derby, but anyway, that for me stands out and epitomises what you know, this world of football and football charity clubs can do.
Yeah. Guys, you got examples?
Yeah. I think one example probably, Rose, I'm reading your mind here, I'm sure we think the same, but one of the many examples, and it's hard to give, you know, lots at this point, but we have a female coach called Roya in our network, and Roya came to the Powerhouse Project. You know, she was a grassroots coach, great leader, but she said, look, I really want to be a female coach, I just sort of don't know how to get there. We then put her on a UEFA B preparation programme. I have to say, by the way, every qualification is fully funded by the Powerhouse Project. So the entry to barriers don't exist. So, we cover travel, expenses, and fully fund qualifications. Kit, what you name it, the coaches are given it. She then goes on a UEFA B preparation programme. Partnerships with Chelsea, Spurs, Birmingham, Brighton. We then secured Roya an internship at Chelsea as an under-15s female coach, obviously. She done her year there. They then offered her a full-time role as the under-16s head coach. When I look at Roya 3 years ago to Roya now, who works at Cobham every day for Chelsea Football Club, who came to us at, as a grassroots club that just had a dream, I go, that's the impact. And our work is to just continue to replicate that, which we have done. But I think that journey in particular over a 3-year span is like, yeah, that's it. That's it. So yeah, Roya always sticks out for me.
Defo.
I think it is. It's the personal stories, and you can give all the stats you like, but you meet one person who's had their life changed by football. And for me, it's a woman called Kaylee who works at the Tigers Trust, and her story's on the Premier League website, and so I'm not sharing something that she wouldn't, but at school she didn't go on too well. She was in trouble quite a lot in the head teacher's office, and had a teacher said, you'll never achieve anything in your life. And she started going to Kicks, I think age 7, the Premier League Kicks programme, and she worked her way through that with coaches who supported her, trusted adults who were in her life and believed in her, and she became a volunteer, and then she became a coach, and she got her qualifications, and then she became social inclusion manager, then she became the Kicks coordinator, and now she's head of community programmes and safeguarding for the Tigers Trust, and she's helping young Kayleys, people like her, to come back through the system to find themselves through football and feel like they belong to something. And that's probably the most impactful thing, is when you see people belong to something and feel that they found their place, their tribe, their team. It's just incredible. And people want to just keep giving it back. It's amazing.
Rosie?
Oh, okay, right, yeah. Do you know what, for me, it's probably the biggest realisation I probably had, and where I gained the most inspiration, was probably when I realised that actually, in a weird way, because it's negative, but then we flipped it into a positive, that actually the issues that women were facing were not just subject to coaching. And actually through conversation, the emotions and the feelings that women feel when they step into a room that they might not, the environment might not be right for them, actually is inclusive when it comes to coaches, when it comes to media, when it comes to women working in business. And actually for me, that was a light bulb moment where I said to Mole, okay, the programs that we're doing, we've got to lift them up, and we've got to really spread this across the pillars that we've worked in our own lives, because that's really important to us. So I think I've gained inspiration along the way through conversations I've had with women as part of the community, and just young girls coming through. It's like, how can we make change for them, So that's where I would say I've found inspiration in the work we do.
Wonderful, thank you. We've got 1 minute left. Any more questions? We've got one there and then one here.
I think there's some kind of like generic consensus about like fundings of EFL clubs. So getting the finance getting more and more difficult, and also probably, I'm not sure if it's related, but about the Premier League and the EFL, the money going down and all that. Then I mean, now the financial situation is getting more difficult. In terms of the community work by the EFL or the Premier League, I mean, does that have an effect on it? It's just that I don't have much knowledge about the funding structure, whether these kind of stuff will get affected.
I can probably take that, but Debbie might want to add. The brilliant news is that on this we're really collaborative. We don't compete at all. So the Premier League Charitable Fund doesn't only fund Premier League community organisations, it funds right across the EFL as well. So we really collaborate to support them in every way, be that finances or otherwise. So of the £34 million a year we give out, we give £17 million of that to EFL club community organisations. So I think it's a good news story for football. There's a massive investment, probably more than any other corporate sector is giving to its charities. But Debbie, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Well, no, I would, agree with everything that Ruth has just said there, but I would also emphasise that although all of those football club charities are getting money via the Premier League and the EFL, they are still charities, and so they really do rely on external funding from organisations to deliver many of their programmes. We had another question at the back. Yeah.
So I'm a football coach, and I know that coaches have a huge responsibility in terms of helping women and girls build good relationships in all sports, not just football. but I'm also aware of the coaching courses that are currently available through the FA don't necessarily prepare coaches for that social impact element. So I guess my question is around what can we do in that area to make sure that the coaches who are coming out of those courses, or even coaches who are currently practicing, both male and female, are prepared to coach in the women and girls game, so that we can positively impact people's relationships with sport and not have more girls and women dropping out early.
There's a whole piece of work to be done on that. By the way, you should definitely be in Powerhouse, so we'll chat, come see us after. But, you know, I think there is definitely a whole load of work to be done, and I think for us it's about stages. So the first issue is, okay, there's a massive ratio problem on qualifications. So you might actually be the only woman on your UEFA B or UEFA A, for example. So let's do that bit first. And then I think this workforce and this powerhouse community that we're building then means that actually we've got a community to start with. Then we can start looking at education on, okay, you need to be ready to coach the girls' game because it's different to the boys' game. And I think we don't prepare coaches enough for that. But for us, if I'm being completely honest, that is a step that is coming next, but we haven't done any work in that yet. But complete transparency, we are aware that there are issues.
I think what we do, though, just to kind of counteract that a little bit, is that throughout the programs that we do create, like whether it be Next One's Up, UEFA B, in which we're touching all age groups there as well, it's like we bring the social element into the program. So we are working on like confidence building, but then also like the mindset towards the coaches that we're developing, which is really important. So we are having conversations around how to work with a young girl who may lack confidence, and how you bring the best out of them and how you create the right environment. So therefore we hope that through our programs, we are developing coaches that think differently. And I think that's where we're going after, and we need to do more work in that space. We need to be working with bigger numbers. But I think the coaches that do come out of the Powerhouse Project programs do think in a different way to your typical coach. So that's hopefully what we'll do more of.
Well, thank you very much. I'm seeing the sign to stop. I would say I would end by saying it's been an absolute privilege to share this panel with 4 inspiring women, and I thank them all for that. Hopefully you will go away feeling uplifted that you're part of an industry that is definitely changing lives, and hopefully take some heart as well from knowing that even if you're a TV star, you occasionally feel a little bit daunted by that red light. So thank you very much, everybody. And you're due in the Bobby Moore suite at 4:45.